The talk around Charleston is about Porgy and Bess, which is coming to this year's Spoleto Festival. In this special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I speak exclusively with Jonathan Green and Festival Director Nigel Redden. So here we sit on George Street in downtown Charleston. It's high noon. Next week, Friday at high noon, will be the beginning of the opening ceremonies for Spoleto and Piccolo. And as you know, Spoleto's celebrating 40 years. I'm wondering, where are you emotionally?
Well, I have to say 40 years is amazing to me. I am just surprised that it's managed to continue on so, I think, vitally after all this time. But I've been looking at the past because we have a book that we've just written about 40 years of Spoleto, and it's fascinating to see where we've been and where we've come to. And I think this year is going to be a kind of a landmark year, to some extent because of Porgy and Bess, and to some extent because of everything that Jonathan Green has done for us this year.
And the fact that you're still here.
Yes, you haven't driven me away. No. I mean, working with Jonathan has been fabulous.
He's an icon.
No, and also, I mean, I think one of the things that the festival does every year is to have people look at something with fresh eyes. I mean, whether it's something in Charleston or a work of art, something on a stage. And I think this year we're looking at, through Jonathan's eyes at Porgy and Bess, and through Jonathan's eyes at Charleston in many ways. And I think that's very exciting.
Jonathan, where are you emotional with this?
Well, I'm ecstatic. It's like studying for a test. You've taken the test,
Yeah.
you've passed, now you can just enjoy the rest of the festivities. And still working very hard. I'm working on a lot of things. Many projects going on. But the celebration of this is like, I would consider this to be the highest point of my career.
How so?
Also because I have an opportunity to ask some questions of our communities and our culture about a history and a culture that I am a part of.
Right.
And that I have been working with other projects for a number of years leading in to all of this around Porgy and Bess and what I'm doing with the visual and costume design element of it, and trying to help people understand more about African American culture, history, the economics of it, and who really did the work in Charleston for all of this, hundreds of years. And that when you have a people that have worked and created an iconic American city, those people are very diverse in terms of their backgrounds and experiences as well. So with Porgy and Bess being our first American opera, which includes one of the highest abilities of Black culture, and that's the vocal, in terms of what people know of us or have heard of us around the world. It is a way for an artist to sort of put a sort of a visual imagery onto an incredible history, an incredible story, and people remember most based on visual imagery.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that with what we're doing, asking the question, what if Africans came here like everyone else, it gives us an opportunity rather than to look at some of the really difficult parts of our history. It just gives everyone, including African Americans as well, an opportunity to look at ourselves through a new lens with a heavy emphasis on West African culture.
That is awesome. And let me talk to you about the obvious Porgy and Bess, because I know in the welcome letter, Nigel, you basically said that Porgy and Bess was here in the 1970 when the Gilliard Auditorium was obviously opening up, but obviously it didn't come in time for a Spoleto Festival, which was many years later. And now that you have it back, and I know that you said that this is the only choice that you have when it comes to Porgy and Bess. Why Porgy and Bess? Why now?
Well, when the 1970 production was done, the Gilliard was maybe a couple of years old,
Right.
And my understanding is that it was the first theater in Charleston built with only one entrance. That is, that whites and blacks sat together in the Gilliard from the beginning, which is not true in any of the other theaters in town. They were segregated, and the Gershwin estate would not allow the performance of Porgy and Bess in a segregated theater, so that it couldn't be performed in Charleston until after desegregation, and it was done in 1970 as a way to bring the entire community together and to say that this theatre was for everyone in the community. And my understanding is, I wasn't there, my understanding is that there was a huge audience of people from both sides of the community, and that it was an emotional landmark, it was a historic landmark, it was a landmark artistically, and something that was very, very important to the community. And it defined the Gilliard in some ways for many people. When we understood that the Gilliard would be renovated, we wanted to have make the same statement that this theatre was for everyone in the community. Unfortunately, the way it worked out is that it was for everyone in the community who bought tickets early, because the tickets sold out after 2 weeks. So it was difficult to include everyone in the community, but we needed to do Porgy and Bess, but also in a way that was specific to Charleston, that was different from the way it would have been done in, let's say, Chicago or New York or San Francisco. Yeah. I mean, it was written here, it was set here, and in some ways we had to find someone who understood the Gullah culture, who understood the culture of what DeVos Hayward was describing in his novel. And Jonathan was the only choice. So, I mean, Jonathan was the first person that I spoke to about this production. Well, I spoke to our staff about the fact that we were going to do it. But, I mean, it was we absolutely needed to have Jonathan in order to make this something that was going to be really appropriate for, special to Charleston. And I think, frankly, the production, I think, will prove I was going to say wisdom of this choice, but I mean that would be attributing wisdom to me. So no. How right this choice was, and I mean it is going to be a somewhat different Porgy. I mean it's not going to be the Porgy that everyone thinks they know, and I think that's important too. Yes. What this production will show us is that the people in Catfish Row are American, are African American, but are African, and that the African aesthetic is something that you hear in the music that Gershwin was very influenced by, and to some extent because it's so much part of now American culture, you don't hear the roots in the way that you might have in the 1920s and the 1930s, and now I mean it's American music. Yes. But I think that what this production does is visually show that the Catfish Row is transformed and becomes African, and that I think reminds us of what the music is telling us, reminds us of what the story is telling us, and it also happens to be beautiful. Yeah.
And speaking of which, Jonathan, I know that you told the Charleston magazine, quote, "My work reflects a spiritual and joyful evolution that comes from a perspective of clarity, feeling and knowing more about the history and the fact that I'm making changes to add to that history." And I'm wondering, what do you want Porgy and Bess to really reflect?
Well, Porgy and Bess will reflect West African culture, because that's where they came from, and with an adoption, amalgamation of American culture. Sure. Some native culture in there. Just like people everywhere, when people migrate together, integrate, they borrow parts of their own culture, and that comes out in design and every aspect, from cooking to dancing. It all becomes another culture, and so this Porgy and Bess is a culture of an African American people from the perspective of Africa really having a part in it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And Jonathan, you also told the Charleston magazine, basically that, this is really your high career point. When you look back to your career where you started to now, what is the biggest thing that sticks out in your mind?
Graduation. But I think probably Gullah Images, which was published in 1982, right. And that's fairly young for an artist to have a major coffee table book printed by university. That's just almost unheard of. And it's been successfully selling ever since. And so that is a continuing high point for me. But the high points are really getting involved in productions where I can do my work, and my work is a visual image maker. And if any opportunity I have to do that, it's a win. It's a win.
Yeah. And Nigel, you told Charleston Magazine the following: Jonathan has non-stop ideas. He's pitching us in a variety of different ways. And I'm curious, what way is he pitching the Spoleto Festival into this time?
Well, I think this particular production of Porgy is special and unique, as I've said, but it's actually beyond that. I mean, one of the wonderful or difficult things about Jonathan, depending on
the day,
is that it's not just about the production. It's not just about Porgy and Bess on stage. It's about lots of other things. So that, for example, we started talking about how to expand on the idea of this production. And one of the we've talked about the fact that the set becomes Africanized as the opera evolves, and we discussed the idea of taking this series of images and really taking it out into the community and putting it on houses.
Yes.
So and I thought, wow, this is a great idea. Maybe we could do one or two. And so Jonathan sent me a list of 15, and also I thought originally that what we would do is sort of take some houses that are obvious. I mean, where people would see them,
right.
And it would be, in some ways not an ad for the performance, but it would become a bit of a conversation stimulus. And what Jonathan suggested was what we should do is an African American itinerary. That it would be an itinerary of locations that have some resonance in the African American community in Charleston, and certainly the houses that you came up with. I mean, some of them I was aware of, but most of them I wasn't aware of, as someone who's been in Charleston for a long time. And it was, I think, again, the opportunity to see Charleston with fresh eyes, to see things that you didn't know were there, and all of a sudden they're there, and you learn something about the city, whether you are a visitor or whether you are a resident. And I think it's a way of having someone else sort of tap you on the shoulder and say, have you ever thought about that? Have you ever seen that thing over there? And I think that is such a useful aspect of life for all of us.
Yes, indeed. Describe to me the following one word: the LA Dance Project.
In one word?
Yeah.
I don't think that I could do that. But the LA Dance Project is a very vital, that's probably the word that I would use.
Okay.
It's vital and alive.
Yeah.
It's a company that straddles ballet and modern dance, and they're just full of energy.
Yeah. The Havana Rockatan.
Havana Rockatan is a kind of history of Cuban dance and Cuban music. It's a kind of evolution. And one of the things that is extraordinary about Cuba is the sensuality of the place. Yes. And you find that in that dance.
Yes, indeed. The Bohemian Trio.
Bohemian Trio is has been exploring jazz in a kind of a very unique, personal way. They formed this combination in college and have gone with it ever since in their own very personal path.
Yes, the Gilliard Center.
The Gilliard, I think, has turned out to be a wonderful theater. And I was looking at Porgy and Bess last night in the theater at the sets up, and just thinking to myself, this looks gorgeous in here.
Yeah, Jonathan?
I agree. It's an incredible visual delight, and also the colors that we pulled into the set designs. That if we were not operating from the perspective of if Africans came here like everyone else, we could not have arrived at those colors and those shapes and designs. And when you look at the foundations of shapes, circle, square, triangle, rectangular, and I think the cross is thrown in there. That's the foundation of African culture. Yeah. Those very basic symbols, which I use in my work. That's the construction of being an artist. In terms of doing the figure, you have to know those shapes. I'm looking forward to seeing everything humanly possible. I'm looking forward to seeing my friend Renee Marie perform, and looking forward to meeting Mr. Bill T. Jones, seeing him. And I guess because I have kind of a history age myself, I can go back 40 years, and so there are a lot of people that I've known for 40 years that were performers, and many of them have passed now, but there are remnants of them that their teachings have been passed on to other people.
Wow. One word to describe not Jonathan Green the artist, but Jonathan Green the person.
Generous,
Yes.
kind,
Yes, he is.
good fun.
Yes. One word to describe Nigel Redden, the person, not the festival's director.
Oh, it's the same person? I'll just give you the word that I've done.
Yeah. Gardens Corner.
Beautiful.
Mayor John Tecklenburg.
Fascinating.
Inspirational.
Yes, he is. Yeah. Well, Nigel Redden and Jonathan Green, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. And I'm a huge fan of yours. My mother is as well.
Thank you, Mr. Washington.
I appreciate this. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. I appreciate it.